It was a hot summer afternoon in the small town of Maplewood. The sun hung high in the sky, casting long shadows on the cracked sidewalks and dusty streets. People were doing their best to stay cool. Some kept their windows open, hoping for a breeze. Others sat under trees or on porches with fans in hand. One of those people was Mrs. Evelyn Johnson, an elderly black woman who had lived in the same house for over 40 years. Her porch was her sanctuary, a place where she could sit and watch the world go by while sipping on a tall glass of lemonade. Evelyn wasn't one to complain about much. She'd seen a lot in her life, good times and bad, and always found a way to keep moving forward. But today something felt different. Maybe it was the heat that made everything feel heavier, slower, more unbearable. Or maybe it was just the fact that she hadn't seen anyone walking down her street all day. It was quiet, too quiet. That kind of silence often brought unease, even if you couldn't quite put your finger on why. As Evelyn adjusted her wide-brimmed hat to shield herself from the sun, she noticed a police car slowly rolling down the road. At first, she didn't think much of it. Police cars came through the neighborhood occasionally, patrolling for no particular reason other than routine checks. But this time, the car slowed almost to a stop right in front of her house. The driver's side window rolled down, revealing Officer Greg Miller, a man known around town not only for his badge but also for his short temper and unpleasant attitude. Greg scanned the area lazily, his sunglasses reflecting the bright sunlight. His eyes landed on Evelyn sitting peacefully on her porch. He frowned slightly, leaning out of the car just enough to get a better look at her. To Evelyn it seemed strange. He wasn't waving or smiling like officers sometimes did when they passed residents. Instead, he looked annoyed, almost angry. She shifted uncomfortably in her chair, wondering what could possibly be wrong. "What are you doing here?" Greg called out, his voice sharp and accusatory. Evelyn blinked, caught off guard by the question. "I'm sitting on my porch," she replied calmly, holding her glass of lemonade steady. "This is my home." Greg stepped out of the car, slamming the door behind him. His boots thudded against the pavement as he walked closer, his posture stiff and intimidating. "You can't just sit here like this," he said, pointing at her setup, a small wooden table beside her chair, holding her drink and a plate of cookies she'd baked earlier that morning. "It's obstructing public view." Evelyn raised an eyebrow, confused. "Public view? This is my property, my porch. I've been sitting here every day for years without any trouble." "Well, now there is trouble," Greg snapped back, his tone growing harsher. "People shouldn't have to see clutter like this when they drive by. It's distracting." By now, Evelyn was beginning to feel irritated herself. Who was this man to tell her how to use her own space? She took a deep breath, trying to remain composed. "Officer, I assure you I'm not breaking any laws. I'm simply enjoying some fresh air outside my home. If you have concerns, perhaps we can discuss them politely instead of arguing." But polite discussion wasn't part of Greg's agenda. Something about Evelyn's calm demeanor only fueled his frustration further. Maybe it was because she didn't cower or apologize immediately like others might have done. Or maybe it was something deeper. Years of ingrained prejudice surfacing in the form of anger and disrespect. Whatever the reason, Greg's patience wore thin quickly. Without warning, he reached into his patrol car and grabbed a plastic water bottle from the passenger seat. Before Evelyn could react, he marched up to her porch and poured its contents directly over her head. The cold water soaked her clothes and dripped onto her skin, making her gasp in shock. For a moment, she sat frozen, unable to believe what had just happened. "There," Greg said smugly, tossing the empty bottle aside. "Now maybe you'll think twice before causing problems." Neighbors peeked out from behind curtains and blinds, witnessing the entire scene unfold. Some whispered to each other in disbelief, while others clutched their phones recording the interaction. No one dared to step outside, not yet anyway. They knew Greg's reputation all too well. He was quick to lash out, especially at those he deemed less important than himself. And so, for now, they stayed silent, watching helplessly as Evelyn tried to process what had happened. Slowly, Evelyn stood up, water dripping from her hair and pooling at her feet. She locked eyes with Greg, her expression unreadable. There was no fear in her gaze, only disappointment and quiet strength. "You may think this gives you power," she said softly, her voice steady despite the situation. "But all you've shown me today is how weak you truly are." For a split second, Greg hesitated. Her words struck a nerve, though he refused to let it show. Instead, he smirked, turning back toward his car as if nothing unusual had occurred. "Have a good day, ma'am," he said mockingly, before climbing inside and driving away. Once he was gone, Evelyn sank back into her chair, trembling slightly. She wasn't sure whether it was from anger, embarrassment, or sheer disbelief. How could someone treat another human being so cruelly? What had she ever done to deserve such treatment? Across the street, Mrs. Clara Davis, one of Evelyn's longtime friends, finally emerged from her house. She hurried over to the porch, concern etched across her face. "Evelyn, are you okay?" she asked, handing her a towel to dry off. "I'm fine," Evelyn replied, forcing a smile. "Just wet." Clara shook her head, glancing in the direction. Greg's car had disappeared. "That man has no shame. Someone needs to do something about him before he hurts someone else." Little did they know, someone already had. A teenager named Marcus, who lived 2 doors down, had captured the entire incident on his phone. Horrified by what he'd seen, he uploaded the video to social media within minutes. By evening, it had gone viral, sparking outrage not just in Maplewood but across the country. Calls for justice flooded in, demanding accountability for Greg's actions. Meanwhile, Evelyn remained seated on her porch, staring at the horizon as the sun began to set. She didn't know it yet, but her simple act of standing up for herself, even silently, would ignite a movement far greater than she could have imagined. The video of Officer Greg Miller dumping water on Mrs. Evelyn Johnson spread like wildfire. Within hours, it was everywhere: social media platforms, news websites, and even local television stations. People couldn't stop talking about it. The footage showed everything: Greg's aggressive approach, his cruel act of pouring water over Evelyn's head, and the smug smirk on his face as he walked away. For many, it was a shocking example of abuse of power and blatant racism. Marcus, the teenager who recorded the incident, didn't realize how big it would become when he first posted it. He just wanted to share what he saw because it felt wrong to stay silent. But soon his phone was buzzing nonstop with notifications. People were tagging him in posts, thanking him for capturing the moment, and urging others to share the video, so more people could see it. By morning, hashtags like Citing Justice for Evelyn and Respect Her Elders were trending online, drawing attention not only from Maplewood residents but also from activists and journalists across the country. At first, Evelyn didn't know about the video or the uproar it caused. She spent the rest of that evening drying off, trying to calm her nerves after the confrontation with Greg. Her friend Clara stayed with her for a while, offering comfort and reassurance. "You did nothing wrong," Clara kept saying. "He's the one who should be ashamed." But by the next day, there was no avoiding the buzz. Lisa Carter, Evelyn's granddaughter, called early in the morning to check on her. Lisa was a college student studying sociology, and she had already seen the video online. "Grandma, are you okay?" Lisa asked, her voice filled with worry. "I can't believe this happened to you." Evelyn sighed, gripping the phone tightly. "I'm fine, sweetheart. It was upsetting, but I'll get through it. I just don't understand why he acted that way." Lisa paused before responding. "It's not about you, Grandma. It's about him and his prejudices. We need to make sure something like this doesn't happen again, to you or anyone else." With determination in her voice, Lisa told Evelyn she was coming home right away to support her and help figure out what to do next. Meanwhile, the pressure mounted on the Maplewood Police Department. Chief Alan Brooks arrived at work that morning, to find his office flooded with calls and emails demanding answers. Reporters camped outside the station, microphones in hand, shouting questions every time someone walked in or out. Inside, officers whispered among themselves, some defending Greg and others criticizing his actions. Everyone knew this was a serious situation, one that could damage the department's reputation if not handled properly. Chief Brooks wasn't a perfect leader, but he prided himself on fairness and integrity. When he saw the video, he felt a mix of emotions: anger, disappointment, and concern. Anger at Greg for behaving so unprofessionally, disappointment in himself for not addressing potential issues sooner, and concern about how this would affect the community's trust in law enforcement. Sitting in his office, he made a decision. Action needed to be taken immediately. He called an emergency meeting with all senior staff members, including Greg. As they gathered in the conference room, tension hung thick in the air. Some avoided eye contact while others fidgeted nervously. Chief Brooks stood at the front, his expression stern. "We have a serious problem," he began, placing a printed copy of the viral video on the table. "This is unacceptable behavior from anyone wearing this badge. It reflects poorly on all of us." Greg shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his face pale. He hadn't expected things to escalate so quickly. In his mind, he thought maybe a few complaints would come in, but nothing major. Now, faced with the reality of public outrage and scrutiny, he started to panic. What if he lost his job? Worse, what if criminal charges were filed against him? After the meeting, Chief Brooks held a press conference to address the growing concerns. Standing behind a podium, flanked by other high-ranking officers, he spoke directly to the cameras. "What happened yesterday does not represent the values of our police department," he said firmly. "Officer Miller's actions were inappropriate and will not be tolerated. An internal investigation has been launched and appropriate disciplinary measures will follow." The crowd of reporters shouted questions, their voices overlapping. "Will Officer Miller be fired?" one asked. "What steps are being taken to prevent this from happening again?" another pressed. Chief Brooks answered as best he could, promising transparency and accountability. But deep down, he knew words weren't enough. Actions would speak louder, and he intended to deliver. Later that afternoon, Lisa arrived at Evelyn's house. She hugged her grandmother tightly, tears welling up in her eyes. "I'm so sorry you had to go through this," Lisa said softly. "But we're going to fight back, together." Evelyn nodded, feeling a mix of gratitude and apprehension. She appreciated her granddaughter's passion, but she also worried about stirring up trouble. "I don't want to cause problems for anyone," Evelyn admitted. "I just want to live my life in peace." Lisa understood where her grandmother was coming from, but she believed change was necessary. "This isn't just about you anymore, Grandma. It's about standing up for what's right. If we let this slide, it sends a message that this kind of behavior is okay, and it's not." With Lisa's encouragement, Evelyn agreed to file a formal complaint against Greg. They visited the police station the following day, accompanied by a local civil rights attorney named Mr. Thompson. He was a kind man in his late 50s, with a calm demeanor and a reputation for fighting injustice. "Don't worry, Mrs. Johnson," he assured her. "We'll make sure your voice is heard." As they entered the building, Evelyn felt nervous but resolute. She knew this wouldn't be easy, but she also knew it was important. While waiting to speak with Chief Brooks, she noticed several officers watching her from afar. Some looked sympathetic, while others seemed uneasy. Word had clearly spread about her visit, and the atmosphere was tense. When Chief Brooks finally greeted them in his office, he appeared genuinely remorseful. "Mrs. Johnson, I can't apologize enough for what happened," he said sincerely. "Please know that we're doing everything we can to ensure justice is served." Evelyn studied him carefully, searching for sincerity in his eyes. After a moment, she nodded. "Thank you, Chief Brooks. I hope this leads to real change, not just for me, but for everyone in our community." Over the next few days, the story continued to dominate headlines. Local leaders, including Pastor Daniel Hayes, joined the conversation, calling for unity and reform. Pastor Hayes delivered a powerful sermon at his church, urging congregants to stand together against racism and prejudice. "We must love each other as God commands," he declared. "But loving each other also means holding people accountable when they do wrong." Community members organized protests outside the police station, holding signs that read, "Respect our elders," and "End police brutality." The demonstrations remained peaceful, with participants chanting slogans and singing songs of hope. Even children joined in, carrying handmade posters and handing out flyers to passers-by. It was clear that the incident had struck a chord, awakening a desire for justice and equality. Back at home, Evelyn tried to focus on everyday tasks, but it was hard to ignore the constant attention. Neighbors stopped by frequently to offer support, bringing food and flowers as gestures of solidarity. Strangers wrote letters and sent messages of encouragement, thanking her for her bravery. Though overwhelmed, Evelyn found comfort in knowing she wasn't alone. One evening, as she sat on her porch watching the sunset, Lisa joined her. "How are you holding up, Grandma?" Lisa asked gently. Evelyn smiled faintly. "I've been better, but I'm managing. This whole thing has been exhausting. But I'm glad people are paying attention. Maybe something good will come out of it." Lisa reached over and squeezed her hand. "Something good will come out of it, I promise." As darkness fell over Maplewood, the town braced itself for what lay ahead. The road to justice would be long and challenging, but the seeds of change had already been planted. And though Evelyn never sought to be at the center of it all, her quiet strength and dignity inspired countless others to join the fight for a better future. The days following the viral video were filled with tension and uncertainty. Officer Greg Miller, once confident in his position and authority, now found himself at the center of a storm he couldn't control. His usual swagger was gone, replaced by a nervous energy that made him jittery and irritable. Every time his phone buzzed or someone knocked on his door, he flinched, fearing it might be another angry message, a summons from the police department, or even worse, news of criminal charges. Greg tried to convince himself that everything would blow over eventually. He told himself that people exaggerated things online all the time, and that the public's outrage would fade as soon as another scandal captured their attention. But deep down, he knew this was different. This wasn't just some minor controversy. It was a direct attack on his character and career, and the more he thought about it, the more panicked he became. At the police station, Chief Alan Brooks was working tirelessly to manage the fallout. He spent hours reviewing evidence, speaking with witnesses, and consulting with legal advisors to ensure the investigation into Greg's actions was thorough and fair. While he understood the community's anger, he also wanted to make sure due process was followed. Still, the pressure from outside the department was immense. Protesters gathered daily outside the building, holding signs and chanting slogans demanding accountability. Reporters camped out front, eager for updates. It seemed like everyone had an opinion about what should happen next. One morning, Chief Brooks called an emergency meeting with all officers. The room was tense as they filed in, avoiding eye contact and whispering nervously among themselves. When everyone was seated, Chief Brooks stood at the front, his expression serious. "We're facing a crisis," he began, his voice firm but calm. "What happened has shaken the trust between our department and the community we serve. Our job now is to rebuild that trust, and fast." He went on to outline several steps the department planned to take, including mandatory anti-bias training, increased oversight, and greater transparency in handling complaints. Some officers nodded in agreement, while others looked skeptical or frustrated. Greg sat silently, his hands clenched into fists under the table. He felt exposed, judged, and powerless, all emotions he wasn't used to feeling. Later that day, Chief Brooks received a call from Mrs. Evelyn Johnson's attorney, Mr. Thompson. They arranged a meeting for the following morning, not just with Evelyn and Lisa, but also with other community leaders who wanted to discuss systemic changes within the police force. Chief Brooks agreed, knowing it was an opportunity to show the public that the department was serious about reform. When the meeting finally took place, the atmosphere was charged with emotion. Evelyn and Lisa arrived early, accompanied by Pastor Daniel Hayes and a few other local activists. They sat across from Chief Brooks in his office, their faces resolute. Evelyn carried herself with quiet dignity, despite the weight of everything she'd endured. Lisa, on the other hand, radiated determination, ready to advocate for her grandmother and the broader community. Chief Brooks started the conversation by thanking everyone for coming. I want you to know how deeply sorry I am for what happened, he said, looking directly at Evelyn. No one deserves to be treated the way you were treated. We're committed to making sure this never happens again. Evelyn nodded slowly, appreciating his sincerity but still cautious. Thank you, Chief Brooks, she replied. But apologies aren't enough. What matters most is action. Lisa leaned forward, her tone passionate but respectful. We're not here just for my grandma. This is about creating real change. People are scared to interact with the police because they don't know if they'll be treated fairly. That fear needs to end. Pastor Hayes added his thoughts, emphasizing the importance of mutual respect and understanding. It's not just about punishing one person, he said. It's about addressing the root causes of these issues. Training, communication, accountability. All of it matters. As the discussion continued, Chief Brooks listened intently, taking notes and asking questions. He promised to implement many of their suggestions, such as requiring body cameras for all officers, establishing a civilian review board to handle misconduct cases, and hosting regular town hall meetings to foster dialogue between the police and the community. By the end of the meeting, there was a sense of cautious optimism. Evelyn and the others left feeling hopeful that progress could be made, if the promises were kept. Back at the station, however, chaos reigned. Rumors swirled about Greg's fate, and tempers flared among the officers. Some defended him, arguing that he was being unfairly targeted, while others criticized his behavior and demanded swift punishment. The division within the ranks was palpable, adding another layer of complexity to an already difficult situation. Greg's anxiety reached its peak when Chief Brooks called him into his office later that afternoon. As Greg walked down the hallway, his heart pounded in his chest. He knocked hesitantly on the door before stepping inside. Chief Brooks gestured for him to sit, his expression unreadable. Officer Miller, Chief Brooks began, folding his hands on the desk. You're aware of the severity of this situation. Your actions have caused significant harm, not only to Mrs. Johnson but also to the reputation of this department. Greg swallowed hard, his throat dry. Sir, I didn't mean for things to get this far. I was just doing my job. Chief Brooks raised an eyebrow, his voice firm. Dumping water on an elderly woman sitting on her own porch is not part of your job description. You let your biases cloud your judgment, and that's unacceptable. Greg opened his mouth to respond but quickly closed it again. He realized there was no excuse that could justify what he'd done. Instead, he stared at the floor, shame washing over him. After a long pause, Chief Brooks continued. Effective immediately, you're being placed on administrative leave pending further investigation. Depending on the outcome, additional disciplinary measures may follow, including possible termination. Greg's stomach dropped. He had hoped for leniency, perhaps a slap on the wrist or a temporary suspension. Hearing those words, administrative leave and possible termination, felt like a death sentence for his career. He mumbled something incoherent before stumbling out of the office, his mind racing with worst-case scenarios. Word spread quickly through the station about Greg's status. Some officers sympathized with him, believing the consequences were too harsh, while others thought he deserved every bit of it. Either way, the incident served as a wake-up call for everyone. Conversations about bias, accountability, and professionalism became commonplace, forcing many to confront uncomfortable truths about themselves and the system they worked within. Outside the station, protests continued to grow. More people joined the demonstrations each day, united by a shared desire for justice and reform. Local businesses showed their support by hanging signs in their windows that read, "Stand with Evelyn" and "Justice for All." Even children participated, drawing pictures of peace symbols and hearts to display on lampposts and fences. For Evelyn, the attention was overwhelming but validating. She never sought to become a symbol of resistance, but seeing so many people rally around her gave her strength. Neighbors checked on her regularly, bringing meals and offering kind words. Strangers sent letters and gifts, expressing admiration for her courage. Despite the challenges, Evelyn found solace in knowing she wasn't alone. One evening, as she sat on her porch watching the sunset, Lisa joined her. "How are you feeling, Grandma?" Lisa asked softly. Evelyn sighed, leaning back in her chair. "Tired, but hopeful. It's been a lot to handle, but I'm glad people care. Maybe this will lead to something good." Lisa smiled, squeezing her grandmother's hand. "It will. Because of you." As night fell over Maplewood, the town braced itself for what lay ahead. The fight for justice was far from over, but the seeds of change had taken root. And though the road ahead would be challenging, Evelyn's quiet resilience inspired countless others to keep pushing forward. For her, for themselves, and for future generations. The weeks that followed the incident were a whirlwind of activity in Maplewood. The town, usually quiet and uneventful, had transformed into a hub of protests, meetings, and discussions about justice and reform. Officer Greg Miller's actions had sparked something bigger than anyone could have anticipated, a movement for change that touched every corner of the community. Greg himself was struggling to cope with the fallout. Being placed on administrative leave left him feeling isolated and powerless. He avoided social gatherings, fearing judgment from his colleagues and neighbors. When he did venture out, people stared at him with cold, disapproving eyes. Some muttered under their breath as he passed by, while others openly confronted him, calling him names or accusing him of being a disgrace to the badge. It was clear that his reputation in Maplewood was shattered, perhaps beyond repair. At first, Greg tried to justify his behavior to himself. He told himself that Mrs. Evelyn Johnson had somehow provoked him, even though deep down he knew it wasn't true. He replayed the video in his mind over and over again, cringing each time he saw his own smug expression after dumping water on her head. No matter how hard he tried to rationalize his actions, guilt gnawed at him relentlessly. For the first time in his life, Greg began to question his beliefs and biases, the very things that had driven him to act so cruelly. Meanwhile, Chief Alan Brooks worked tirelessly to address the growing demands for accountability and reform. He organized training sessions for officers focused on recognizing and addressing implicit bias. These sessions weren't optional. Attendance was mandatory for everyone on the force. At first, some officers resisted, complaining that they didn't need sensitivity lessons. But as the trainers shared real-life examples of how unconscious prejudices could lead to harmful decisions, many started to see the value in what they were learning. Chief Brooks also introduced new policies aimed at increasing transparency within the department. Officers were now required to wear body cameras during all interactions with the public, and footage would be reviewed regularly to ensure compliance with proper procedures. Additionally, a civilian review board was established to handle complaints against officers, giving residents a voice in holding law enforcement accountable. These changes didn't happen overnight, but they marked an important step toward rebuilding trust between the police and the community. People noticed the effort even if skepticism lingered. Pastor Daniel Hayes played a key role in bridging the gap, organizing town hall meetings where residents could voice their concerns directly to the police department. These gatherings were emotional at times, with heated debates breaking out over past grievances and future expectations. Yet despite the tension, they provided a platform for honest dialogue, a crucial ingredient for healing. For Evelyn and Lisa, life became a mix of challenges and triumphs. Evelyn continued to receive overwhelming support from neighbors, friends, and strangers alike. Her porch remained a gathering spot, not just for family but for activists and community leaders who sought her advice and encouragement. Lisa took on a leadership role in organizing events, from rallies to workshops on racial equality. Together, they inspired others to join the fight for justice, turning their pain into purpose. One day, while Evelyn and Lisa were preparing for another meeting, there was a knock at the door. When Evelyn opened it, she found a young woman standing there, clutching a notebook nervously. "Mrs. Johnson?" the visitor asked hesitantly. "I'm Sarah, a reporter from the local paper. I was hoping we could talk." Evelyn hesitated for a moment before inviting Sarah inside. She'd been approached by journalists countless times since the incident, but something about this young woman seemed different, more genuine. Over tea, Sarah explained that she wanted to write a feature story about Evelyn's experience, not just the confrontation with Greg, but also the broader impact it had on the community. Evelyn agreed, realizing that sharing her story could help amplify the message of hope and resilience. When the article was published, it resonated deeply with readers. Sarah captured Evelyn's strength and grace, highlighting how one person's courage could spark meaningful change. The piece ended with a powerful quote from Evelyn: "We can't erase the past, but we can shape the future. Let's choose kindness, respect, and understanding for everyone." As the weeks turned into months, momentum continued to build. Protesters remained steadfast, keeping pressure on the police department to follow through on its promises. Businesses contributed resources, offering free meals and supplies to volunteers organizing events. Even children got involved, creating art projects and poems about unity and fairness, which were displayed in schools and libraries across town. Eventually, the internal investigation into Greg's conduct concluded. Based on witness testimonies, video evidence, and his history of problematic behavior, the decision was made to terminate his employment with the police department. The news came as a relief to many, though some argued that firing him wasn't enough. He should face criminal charges for assault. While the legal battle dragged on, the termination sent a clear message. No one was above accountability. Greg disappeared from public view after losing his job. Rumors circulated that he had moved out of town, unable to bear the shame and hostility he faced daily. Whether he truly understood the gravity of his actions or simply retreated into obscurity remained unclear. What mattered most was that his departure allowed the focus to shift back to the positive changes happening in Maplewood. Chief Brooks became a vocal advocate for reform, attending conferences and speaking engagements to share his department's journey. He emphasized the importance of listening to the community and taking concrete steps to address systemic issues. His efforts earned him praise not only locally but also nationally, as other departments looked to Maplewood as a model for progress. Evelyn, too, emerged as a symbol of resilience and dignity. Despite never seeking the spotlight, she embraced her role as a leader in the movement for justice. She spoke at rallies, met with government officials, and mentored young activists eager to make a difference. Through it all, she remained humble, always reminding others that the fight was far from over. One evening, as autumn leaves swirled in the breeze, Evelyn sat on her porch once again. This time, however, she wasn't alone. Neighbors gathered around, chatting and laughing as children played nearby. Someone brought a guitar, and soon music filled the air. The scene felt worlds away from the tense, divided atmosphere that had gripped Maplewood just months earlier. Lisa joined her grandmother, sitting cross-legged on the porch steps. "Do you think we're making a difference?" she asked quietly. Evelyn smiled, gazing out at the lively crowd. "Yes, sweetheart, we are. Change takes time, but look around. You can already see it happening." Lisa nodded, her heart swelling with pride. They still had work to do, battles to fight, and injustices to confront. But for now, in this moment, surrounded by love and hope, they allowed themselves to feel a sense of accomplishment. Maplewood was healing slowly but surely, and Evelyn's quiet strength had lit the way. Months had passed since the incident with Officer Greg Miller, and Maplewood was beginning to change. The town wasn't perfect. It still carried scars from years of division and mistrust, but there was a sense of progress in the air. People talked more openly about issues like racism and inequality, not just in hushed tones behind closed doors, but in public forums where everyone could participate. Conversations that once felt uncomfortable or taboo were now becoming normal, even necessary. Evelyn Johnson had become a beloved figure in the community. Her courage inspired others to speak up and take action. Neighbors who used to keep to themselves started attending meetings and joining advocacy groups. Parents taught their children about kindness and respect, using Evelyn's story as an example of standing up for what's right. Even local schools incorporated lessons on empathy and social justice into their curriculums, ensuring the next generation grew up with a deeper understanding of fairness. Lisa Carter, Evelyn's granddaughter, found her own voice during this time. She graduated college early, driven by her desire to make a difference. Instead of pursuing a corporate job, she decided to stay in Maplewood and work with grassroots organizations focused on racial equality. Lisa organized workshops, led discussions, and mentored young people, helping them channel their energy into positive change. Her passion was contagious, and soon she became a trusted leader in the movement. Chief Alan Brooks also continued his efforts to reform the police department. He implemented new policies that prioritized accountability and transparency. Officers wore body cameras at all times, and footage was reviewed regularly to ensure proper conduct. Civilian review boards handled complaints fairly, giving residents confidence that their voices mattered. Anti-bias training sessions became ongoing rather than one-time events, reinforcing the importance of treating everyone with dignity and respect. The changes weren't easy. Some officers resisted at first, feeling scrutinized or unfairly judged. But over time, many came to see the value in these reforms. They realized that building trust with the community made their jobs safer and more rewarding. Slowly but surely, relationships between the police and residents improved. Officers began attending neighborhood events, playing basketball with kids, and chatting with shop owners. These small gestures helped bridge gaps that had existed for years. One day, Chief Brooks invited Evelyn and Lisa to visit the police station. He wanted to thank them personally for their role in pushing for change. When they arrived, they were greeted warmly by several officers who expressed gratitude for their courage and leadership. Chief Brooks led them to a conference room where he presented Evelyn with a certificate of appreciation. "You've done more for this town than anyone can measure," he said sincerely. "Thank you for inspiring us to be better." Evelyn smiled, touched by the gesture. "It's not about me," she replied. "It's about all of us working together to create a better future." Later that week, the town held a special ceremony to honor those who had contributed to the movement for justice. Speakers included Pastor Daniel Hayes, Chief Brooks, and several community leaders. Evelyn was asked to give the closing remarks. As she stood before the crowd, her heart swelled with emotion. She looked out at the faces of friends, neighbors, and strangers united by a shared vision of hope. "I never imagined I'd be standing here today," Evelyn began, her voice steady yet filled with warmth. "I never imagined I'd be standing here today," Evelyn began, her voice steady yet filled with warmth. "When that officer poured water on me, I felt humiliated and angry, but I also felt something else. Hope. Hope that maybe my experience could shine a light on bigger problems we needed to fix. And look at us now. Look how far we've come." She paused, scanning the crowd. Children sat cross-legged on blankets, clutching handmade signs decorated with hearts and peace symbols. Families held hands, smiling despite the challenges they'd faced. Activists stood proudly, wearing T-shirts emblazoned with messages of unity and justice. It was a scene Evelyn had only dreamed of months earlier. "We didn't get here alone," she continued. "Every person in this town played a part. Whether you marched in protests, signed petitions, attended meetings, or simply treated your neighbor with kindness, you made a difference. Change doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't happen because of one person. It happens when we all come together believing in something greater than ourselves." The crowd erupted in applause, cheering for Evelyn and for each other. Tears streamed down some faces while others hugged tightly, overwhelmed by the moment. For so long, fear and division had ruled Maplewood. Now, love and determination were leading the way. After the ceremony, Evelyn walked through the park where the event had taken place. Families lingered, enjoying music, food, and games. Kids ran around laughing, their joy infectious. A group of teenagers approached Evelyn, shyly asking if they could take a picture with her. She nodded graciously, wrapping her arms around them as they smiled for the camera. Later, a little girl handed Evelyn a drawing, a colorful picture of a woman holding hands with a police officer under a bright sun. At the top, written in shaky letters, were the words, "Thank you, Mrs. Johnson." Evelyn's heart melted. She knelt down to the child's level, thanking her for the gift. "This is beautiful. Evelyn said softly. It reminds me that we're all connected, no matter our differences. The girl beamed, skipping back to her parents as Evelyn tucked the drawing safely into her bag. As evening fell, Evelyn returned home, exhausted but fulfilled. She settled onto her porch, watching the stars appear one by one in the darkening sky. Lisa joined her, handing over a cup of hot tea. Today was amazing, Lisa said, leaning against the railing. Do you think we'll ever stop fighting for justice? Evelyn chuckled softly, sipping her tea. Probably not, she admitted. There will always be work to do. But tonight, let's celebrate what we've accomplished so far. Tomorrow, we'll keep going. Lisa nodded, gazing out at the quiet street. Lights glowed in windows and faint laughter drifted from nearby homes. Maplework felt different now, not perfect, but hopeful. Together, they had shown that even in the face of cruelty and injustice, kindness and resilience could prevail. In Doi, the weeks and months that followed, life in Maplewood settled into a new rhythm. Protests turned into peaceful gatherings, and protests turned into peaceful gatherings, and conversations about equality became everyday discussions. Schools hosted cultural festivals celebrating diversity. Businesses supported minority-owned ventures, and neighbors checked on each other more often. The scars of the past hadn't disappeared, but they were healing, thanks to the collective effort of everyone in town. Greg Miller's name rarely came up anymore. Some wondered what had become of him, but most agreed it didn't matter. His actions had served as a catalyst for change, and the focus remained on moving forward rather than dwelling on the past. Occasionally, someone would mention him during a meeting or discussion, not out of anger but as a reminder of why the work they were doing was so important. For Evelyn, every sunrise brought renewed purpose. She continued mentoring young activists, sharing stories of her own struggles and triumphs. Her porch remained a gathering spot, a symbol of strength and perseverance. And though she never sought fame or recognition, she accepted the role she'd been given, knowing it was part of something much larger than herself. Maplewood wasn't just a town anymore. It was a testament to the power of unity and compassion. Through pain and struggle, its people had discovered their ability to create lasting change. And as Evelyn sat on her porch one final evening, surrounded by loved ones and the hum of a thriving community, she knew they had built something truly special, something that would endure for generations to come.